The German 3.7cm anti-tank gun, otherwise known as a PaK-35 or 36, was developed in the late 1930s and would see service in a variety of conflicts including the Second World War. Whilst quite effective against lightly armoured vehicles and light tanks, the troops operating this weapon system found that something a bit bigger was needed for heavier tanks. Hello everyone, I'm Matt, this is Model Minutes, and join me on the workbench today as I build the Tamiya 3.7cm anti-tank gun in 1/35 scale. For a deeper dive inside the contents of the box, take a look at the dedicated unboxing video I've already made. In this video I'll be focusing on what this kit is like to build and summing it up with a review at the end. I'll put a list of the products I used during this build on the screen now to give you an idea of the kind of paints and things to go and get if you fancy replicating my results here. But anyways, let's get into it. As is quite typical, I'll be cutting away the parts from the sprue using my side cutters and then carefully sanding away the seams, rough areas of plastic, and any tiny bits of flash that may be present on the tooling. My glue of choice during this build will be Tamiya Extra Thin Cement. I'm not going to pretend that I know what all the little bits of an anti-tank gun are called, so with that in mind I'm just going to whiz through the build as quickly as I can. This build consists of a number of parts which make up not only the field gun, but also there are some figures. My first step was to focus on the field gun itself, and it is quite nice that Tamiya have designed into this kit an element of play value. There are some bits and pieces here and there that are free to move, open and close or traverse, depending on how you assemble the kit. Personally, I'm not massively fussed whether mine does work in the end, but I will try to preserve this functionality as best I can. Having assembled a lot of these small little parts together, it has built up the majority of the framework of the gun. The defensive plate at the front can then be added onto this, and then I turn my attention onto the supporting legs. Again, these come in a number of parts which need to be glued together, and if you're careful with your cement they should be free to open and close, allowing you to position them how you want. These parts will need to be added onto the axle, which support the wheels that allow the gun to be freely moved around the battlefield. And again there are parts that attach to this to allow this to freely traverse. With all of the parts now assembled together for the main part of the gun, the final step was to add the barrel of the weapon. It is worth noting that you get a normal barrel, but there is also a part which replicates a shaped charge that was used with this weapon system toward the later stages of the Second World War. I, however, will be opting to use just the standard barrel attachment. There are a couple of little extra details such as these ammo boxes which were assembled as well. And with that done, I turned my attention to the figures. It's nice that Tamiya includes some figures with this kit as it adds a little bit of extra value. Whilst these figures come in a number of parts, unfortunately they are not multi-pose, so you must find the correct part to go with the correct figure. My only gripe about these figures is that there are some fairly noticeable seam lines down the sides of most of the parts which needed cleaning up. But on the whole, the level of detail is pretty nice, and they assemble quite well too, the poses looking quite realistic, and they do have lots of little extra details and things which can be added, such as their weapons, water canteens, and other satchels and things. With these figures now complete, it was time to prime. I'm going to use this Humbrol No. 1 grey primer on all of the parts that I've assembled, plus you'll also notice that there are a couple still attached to the sprue. These are empty shell casings and they will be included as part of the diorama a bit later on. When all of these parts have been suitably primed, I also decided to give the figures a light coat of this Tamiya white primer. This should help replicate a zenithal prime, which is going to add contrast and shade, so primarily this white will be applied from kind of above to simulate the sun shining down on the figures and creating a lighter area on the upper surfaces and a more shadowy area on the lower surfaces. After this, I loaded some Humbrol number 32, which is a very dark grey, into my airbrush. This was thinned down with some Tamiya X28 acrylic thinner to allow it to flow more freely. This was airbrushed onto the entire gun assembly, and it's not quite the right shade of grey for a German field grey, but it is close enough by my eye, so it'll do. I also used this paint whilst it was in the airbrush to give an extra layer of shadow to the figures, so they were all sprayed with this paint from below, adding a further effect to the zenithal prime from earlier. After this, Vallejo matte black was used to carefully paint the tyres on the field gun, and then it was applied to the boots of the figures. This Army Painter Peachy Flesh is a speed paint, and this was painted onto all of the fleshy parts of the figures. I quite like using speed paints because they add shade and contrast in pretty much one coat, provided you've done something similar with a zenithal prime like I have done on these figures. For the main uniform colour of these figures, I'm going to be using Humbrol 116 US Dark Green. I did do some research online, and this did seem to be a sort of suggested colour, and it is something I had in the stash, so I thought that I would give it a go. This paint may be thinned down with a drop of water here and there just to help it flow, and I don't want it too thick because I want it to act a bit like a speed paint and help bring out that contrast which I applied with the primer earlier. With that done, the very dark grey makes a reappearance, and I used this to paint the various webbing and straps on the figures. Humbrol 62, which is a leather kind of colour, was then used on their water canteens and a few other details. Humbrol 110, which is a light wood colour, was painted onto the wooden parts of the rifles. Vallejo Gold was used on all of the rounds and shell casings that the team were using in combat. With that done, Humbrol number 1, which is a grey primer colour, was dry brushed onto all of the figures to help bring out some more of the surface details and add further contrast to them. I would also repeat this step on the field gun as well, to further highlight the various surface details on all this metalwork. After this, the light wood colour makes a reappearance. This was then applied to the wheels and the lower areas of the field gun to make it look as though it's accumulated some dirt. I thought that perhaps this weapon system may be used towards the end of the war, and as a result has accumulated some rust. I'm using this Dirty Down Rust paint to simulate this effect. I quite like this product because it's water soluble, and if you get it in the wrong place you can just reactivate it with some water. I applied this in various areas to apply visual interest to the weapon, painting it onto the places where I thought maybe the paintwork would have got chipped or otherwise damaged. And with that, all of these parts are pretty much ready, so all I need now is a little diorama base. I've got one of these little coasters. They're already painted black, so all I actually need to do is apply some glue. I used some PVA glue mixed up with some generic brown paint to create a sticky kind of mud. I then applied various different kinds of scatter all over this small diorama base, even adding some random larger tufts of grass in a few places. Superglue would then be used to glue into place the field gun and the figures, trying to replicate the scene that we saw on the box art on the front of the kit. All of the smaller details need to be added as well, such as the ammo cases and all of the empty casings that I've painted separately. And with that, I'm going to call my build of the Tamiya 3.7cm anti-tank gun complete. With my build complete, I think it's time to wrap up this video with a review. So what do I think of this kit? Well, actually, I had quite a bit of fun with this one. It's a rather uncomplicated kit, although it is a little fiddly at times. I think the main problem I had with this kit is the amount of seam lines on the figures that needed cleaning up, but generally the amount of flash is quite low. It is also worth noting that there are some ejector pin marks on some of the detail surfaces, which may be visible in the finished build, which might need addressing, but I just didn't bother. Instead, I decided to just crack on and hope that they wouldn't be seen. I do quite like that Tamiya have designed into this some elements of play value, such as the wheels being free to rotate, the gun traverse and elevate, and I think even the breech at the rear of the weapon can be opened, as if simulating loading a round into the chamber. I think a small gripe would be that the instructions are in black and white, but there are colour painting instructions on the box which actually help quite a lot. I did pretty much just paint this with what I had available, so the colour matches might not be exactly right for the time period, and the figures don't really represent any specific unit. I did, however, enjoy turning this into a mini diorama, and I quite like that this set comes with a number of additional details which add further interest into the scene. It's difficult to find a recommended retail price for this kit, but it seems to average no more than £6 here in the UK at the time I'm making the video, so this is certainly a kit that won't break the bank. And given the level of detail and the fit of the parts, it's certainly good value for money. However, I'm sure many of you have realised that this is probably not a particularly new tooling, with the information I can find online stating that this is a 1974 tooling. So perhaps it is showing its age in a few places, but if I'm being honest, I think it still holds up pretty well against modern standards. This is kind of one of these kits where Tamiya thinks, if it isn't broke, don't fix it. So this boxing is pretty much all there ever has been, and likely all there ever will be. On the whole, I had quite a bit of fun building this one. It was nice to do something different, and it has helped to give me some more experience with figure painting. I will in the future be looking to get some more kits from Tamiya from within this particular range. And with that, I think I'm going to conclude this video here. This is an inexpensive kit, which despite being a relatively old tooling, is still fairly well detailed and certainly good value for money. With a little extra work, it makes a really convincing little diorama. As always, an honourable mention to my Model Club members for the extra support they give the channel. It's thanks to these guys on screen that I can continue to make videos on a regular basis. If you'd like to join them and find out more about the exclusive perks that you get by becoming a Model Club member, check out the links in the description. I would like to welcome our latest member to the club, Starch Rec Models and Props. Thanks for joining us. Of course, there are other ways to help support the channel, and again, full information is below the video. It is worth noting that this video was actually chosen by you. Having put a poll up on my channel recently, this was the one which seemed to receive the most votes. But don't worry, I will consider building the other ones at some point in the future too. But if you'd like to be able to help influence the kind of content that I create on the channel, make sure you're subscribed with notifications turned on so you don't miss that chance and you stay notified of any videos I upload. Finally though, last thing to say is a massive thank you to you for watching this one, and I'll see you on the workbench again next time.